So Mark Penn is calling for an official internal investigation for ABC News. He wants the president of ABC News. He wants the FCC to get involved. He says that it appears that there was a rigging of the debate outcome. And he is absolutely furious. Now, this is a lifelong Democrat that helped get Bill Clinton into the White House and then advised him for the time that he was in.
What would you advise ABC for the good of the country, for the good of journalism, for the good and future of presidential debates? Is there something smart that ABC as a corporation could do to address the frustration that people had on Wednesday morning?
I actually think they should do a full internal investigation, hire an outside law firm. I don't know how much of this was planned in advance. They didn't happen to, like, they called the city manager of this town. I don't know what they planned in advance. I don't know what they told the Harris campaign. I think that the day after suspicion here is really quite high, and I think that I think a review of all their internal texts and emails it really should be done by an independent party to find out to what extent they were planning on in effect, fact checking just one candidate and in effect rigging the outcome of this debate. And I think the situation demands nothing less than that.
If I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that because I found the work fascinating.
If you're wondering why we're watching an ad for some earbuds, well, it's because the internet has been abuzz with talk of Kamala Harris wearing these same earbuds during her first debate with Donald Trump. And funnily enough, these aren't any ordinary earbuds. The Nova H1 earrings are pretty special and expensive, according to one tech review site. Unlike wireless earbuds or even bone conduction headphones, the Nova H1 earrings produce sound on the earlobe. At a glance, they look like a pair of trendy clip-on earrings, no piercings needed, complete with a freshwater pearl. But technology has been drilled inside the pearl to create the microchambers needed to produce sound. So essentially, they're a very stealthy way to communicate with someone, and if you ever need outside assistance, it's during a presidential debate where you are standing in front of 67 million people and trying to make a winning argument. And we can't even blame her team for using something like this because we already know she isn't the most coherent person when on stage.
I think it's very important, as you have heard from so many incredible leaders, for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future.
So even though there's a really good chance that she was being told what to say, at least she talked and didn't just malfunction like the other guy.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
But Kamala blatantly using such earbuds isn't the only strange thing about this debate, because the more you look into it, the more you realize just how biased the debate was.
Execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But here you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community. As clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
no
Republican.
Judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing.
As you can see, it looked more like an interrogation session than a debate between two candidates. And it was so blatant that people all over the internet are now coming out to protest just how rigged this debate felt.
So that debate was a bunch of BS. I mean, was this a debate between Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, or a debate between Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris versus the moderators? Because the moderators were literally debating Trump and even fact-checking him. They were like, Trump, it says right here, like, that's not correct. We got a piece of paper from a manager that says, like, that's not correct. But they didn't even care to fact check Kamala Harris on the propaganda Project 2025. Yeah, it was very biased. It was so biased. And this is exactly why he has my vote. This is exactly why I'm voting for him. And y'all also noticed how Kamala Harris left her accent outside. Just so fake, disingenuous, phony.
And young people like this girl aren't the only ones who openly protested the moderator's actions. RFK Jr., who has endorsed Donald Trump, also raised questions about the legitimacy of this strange debate.
Clearly biased, who are constantly fact-checking Donald Trump. None of these kind of whoppers that the vice president was saying, and none of her failure to really explain that, answer that first question, that very, very critical first question. They simply sat there on the sidelines and allowed that to pass.
Things were getting so out of hand that even Kamala started interrupting Trump, and he had to silence her in order just to make his point.
Different policies, like she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out.
And as you saw in this video, one thing that stood out the most about this debate is the strangely casual tone expressed by Kamala Harris. No matter how serious the topic was, she was smiling as if Trump was doing stand-up. To most of us, it simply looked like her team had prepped her to smile no matter what was going on. We already know how Trump uses his sharp humor to embarrass his opponents in debates, and it just looked like Kamala was trying to mimic his style in the most awkward way possible. But then again, if the moderators are setting you up for success, you'll obviously have a grin on your face the whole time. Despite all of this, Trump did not fail to mention the secret recording which shows Nancy Pelosi's daughter, who says that her mom was responsible for what happened on January 6th. But before I show you the tape, let's first hear what President Trump said during the debate and how the moderators defended Speaker Pelosi.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes,
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago, her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
Now, even though the moderators and mainstream media refuse to even talk about this video, it will not stop us from taking a look at it because I believe people deserve to hear the full story.
Local media every day, you can't have a fair trial.
Well, the reason, see, I think time is going to remember January 6th differently. Right now, people are still, there's two things. Media needs stuff to fill. I mean, if you watch TV on January 6th, it was like January 6th, 24/7. As time goes on, it's going to be less. And so I think also people are going to lose their office, the jobs. The people that were there are going to lose their jobs. So it's not going to mean anything if you weren't even there and you don't even care.
We need like a water breakout.
Yeah, no, it's right. Okay, I thank you for your time.
Oh, absolutely.
Listen, I really, I know you're not the bad guy. I mean, if there is, I haven't found the bad guy yet, but if there is, I know
Well,
you're
what
not
is the
the
guy
bad
with the eye patch? I mean, he's like a stereotypical bad guy.
But the thing is, why I asked you the question of like, so what was the plan? Is that if there was an insurrection, you were supposed to be in line marching. You're in the military, you know this.
No, that's
you were supposed to have a plan.
Exactly. It's called operations order. You sit down overnight with your soldiers. You go over. All right. You're going to go here. You're going to go in by this side. At this time, we're going to take over this. There's none of that.
If there was an insurrection, it's the sorriest insurrection in the 20th, 21st century ever. No guns.
A guy smoking pot.
I love the guy.
Yeah, I like.
Well, we do that. We just went to New Hampshire last week for the guy that just was drinking beer.
My favorite guy.
Well, now you are free to make your own decision about who was really responsible for what happened on January 6th. Before we end today's video, I really want to show you just how manipulative Kamala Harris was in the debate and how the moderators gave her complete freedom to conjure tales instead of answering some important questions. For instance, when they asked her why she did a 180 turn on her so-called moral stances, her smile immediately vanished, and instead she began talking about families and values.
Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
Well, let me tell you why her stance has changed on fracking and immigration. Her team has said to her that her radical views are unpopular on a national scale, and no one will vote for her if she doesn't change her views. And when you think about it, not every politician can stick to their moral compass like Bernie Sanders, so the change in her tone is not surprising at all. That's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe to the channel. As always, I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch and hope to catch you on the next one.